morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this morning on emotional accountability. My name is Barb Rank on behalf of EFR. I'm going to give it maybe one more minute for people to filter in. We've got about half of who I think we're expecting today, and it's going to be a good group. So continue to multitask, and we'll get started here in just a minute. As we do get ready here, just to point out, the handouts have been added to the chat feature, so those are available, and we do have someone monitoring the chat feature today, so thank you to Johanna. As you have questions or if there's something going on that you can't figure out, just let us know in the chat feature, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. We're going to take about the next 30 minutes or so to talk about our emotions and what does it mean to be emotionally accountable. It's a fun topic, and I hope you just learn a lot, sit back, take one thing away, and see how you can use that to have a better day. All right, yeah, a minute made the difference. We're almost to who I'm expecting. So we'll go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, my name is Barb Rank. I am one of the trainers and life coaches that works on behalf of EFR, and I just love working with people who just want to get a little bit better, or maybe you're stuck and you just don't even know how to take that next step forward, and you're just wanting someone to talk it through, maybe give you some insights and just keep you going. So who can't use an extra accountability partner in these days, in this age? And so know that that's the role that I serve. In addition to training. So in today's content, I really wanted to talk about the impact that our emotions have on us on a daily basis and how they can accrue, and then how that can impact how we see things, even to the point where how do our emotions get us stuck sometimes. But to start off, I wanted to use a video, and this video only has music for sound. There's no other audio. But I just want you to take in this video, and then at the end, I'm going to ask you a very specific question. Let me go ahead and get the music ready. All right, so for any of you who just have a reaction to watching that video, go ahead and add it to the chat if you want to. But can anyone relate? Can anyone relate to that video? Trains coming down the track, and whether you're in leadership or not, you might be a parent, you might be a project manager, you might be a friend. There's always stuff that's being thrown on the track, and you always have to adjust and adapt. So the thing about the video is most times when people look at that, they start to get in that mind of, yeah, it's just, I've got to make sure I'm constantly solving problems and I'm constantly being productive, and I have to make sure I'm paving the way or getting that obstacle removed. So that's what people usually see, is the productivity side of things. Just get the outcome and move on, get the outcome and move on. And I absolutely agree with that. And that's the way that I think too. My bigger question is, how do you think that train conductor felt during that whole experience? And just to keep it simple for today's purposes, I've come up with 3 different colors that I'm going to be referring to. And if you think that he felt down or overwhelmed or discouraged, you might say that he was blue. On the other side, if you think he was feeling hot or agitated or overwhelmed in a kind of more, I was going to say agitated again, but animated way, then he might be on the red side. Or was he feeling completely neutral and positive and kind of grounded and regulated? You know, in that moment, what did the train conductor feel? And again, I've done this a few times. A lot of people would point to the red. He was getting outcomes, but internally he was having a lot of red emotions. And that's normal, right? When crisis occurs, then we tend to go into survival mode or fight or flight or those types of things. It's how do we come back down from that after those train rides or going down that track? How do we keep our emotions regulated so that we're not going too far to the left or too far to the right? That's what I want to talk about here today. And I'm just going to ask Johanna, is there anything in chat that people have commented on that you want to make note of before we move on?
Nothing so far, Barb.
All right. So as we move into today, the topic on emotions is also going to tie back to our physiology. So emotions come with hormones or biological impacts. If we have too much of the blue emotions, too many of the blue emotions for too long or over an extended period of time, and we'll talk about what are those emotions, what's a blue emotion. Whether it's blue or whether it's red, both of those categories come with high levels of cortisol. And cortisol is our stress hormone. Now, it's a necessary hormone. A little bit of cortisol gets us out of bed in the morning. But over periods of time, if we're not regulating or managing our cortisol levels, then our emotions are kind of running the show, and we're actually causing a little bit of our own stress. So the goal today would be to say, okay, you're going to go to red, we're going to go to blue. That just is going to happen. But for us to then take action or be aware on how to get back to that green area, which is where the other overriding hormones come in, or chemicals, like dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin. Those are the things that you get when you have a positive experience. And it could still be, life could still be going on around you and it could still be hard, but you're just able to be more grounded in that moment. You're able to be more settled in that moment because you've been consciously practicing how to get back into the green. And if I have to go really cheesy, I would say it's not easy being green, but it is possible. So as I just mentioned in that last slide, but I want to reiterate, if we're not consciously aware or we're not intentionally monitoring and managing our red and blue experiences, our fuse is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And so we're going into situations just having extreme reactions or excessive reactions, and we don't even feel like ourselves anymore, but it's because the cortisol levels are too high. Today's session, we're in a neutral setting. And because we're in a neutral setting, I really want to dive into words and how much words matter and how your thinking and the words you use in your thinking impact your red and blue and your green. So for this first couple of sections, or this next section, I'm going to go in a deep dive into the difference between pessimistic and realistic. And then I'm going to do optimistic and avoidant. Okay, so pessimistic, realistic, optimistic, avoidant. What do these have to do with emotions and cortisol? Let's find out. First, I'm going to start with realistic. And I want you to picture if this describes you. If you can be described as realistic, then you have a balanced perspective in how you approach things. Meaning, you can see where things could go wrong, and you can also see where things can go right. So you're not saying that either one is more than the other. You're seeing that, yeah, it could go either way. And I want to be realistic in how I think about that. The next one would be measured decision making. And what that just means is I don't go to extremes in my decision making process. I have an emotion, or I recognize that I might be having fear or anxiety, and then I get back into regulation so that I can make a decision from a less extreme place. A couple of other words would be adaptable, measured optimism, not going too far to the right and thinking that it's all going to work out for the best. And again, it goes back to being balanced. There are things that could go wrong, and I need to anticipate those as well. That leads to reasoning. You can think a little more logically or a little more pragmatically about whatever it is you're facing. And if you do give feedback, it's solution-based or constructive versus blaming or justifying. So as I read the description of someone that shows up realistic, my question then would be, how do those behaviors or how did that description make you feel? What is your reaction to someone who approaches solutions or approaches situations from a realistic standpoint? And you don't have to put it in the chat. I'm just going to ask you, if these are the descriptions, are you blue, red, or yellow? And just think about that and have that in mind as we move on. I'm now going to compare that description of realistic to this description of pessimistic. And let me be clear. All of us will have pessimistic mindsets from time to time. All of us will. It comes from fear. It comes from worry, right? And so then it turns into seeing situations a certain way. It's when it becomes a pattern that this is what it's going to sound like. True pessimists can only see the negative. And then they're biased to find ways that that negative thing is true because their thinking has been so patterned that it's probably going to go wrong. It's a negativity bias, and that's just how the patterns work for pessimistic thinkers. There's some catastrophizing going on. What is the worst case scenario? And that's probably going to happen from a pessimistic mindset. And I'm not calling on a person necessarily, I'm calling on a mindset. These are patterns of beliefs that are now adding to the cortisol and the emotion. There's isolation tendencies, and I want to be clear about this one. Pessimists aren't necessarily introverts, right? A lot of people think introverts, they have to be by themselves a lot, and actually healthy introverts do have to be by themselves a lot so they can come back and give their best when they need to. But true pessimists feel like kind of the world's out to get them, and so they will isolate so that they can try to control as much as possible what goes on around them and then their anxiety levels, which leads into emotional unproductivity. If this pessimistic pattern is true, then it is a scary place to live from a sense of, I can't trust, I can't control, I think that everything is going to happen that is bad. And again, I'm being very extreme, but these are the definitions that fit into a true pessimist. It can lead to powerlessness. Well, why bother if I can't control any of this? And then the speech patterns from a true pessimist are generally complaining. Now, again, I'm not calling out anyone. I've had some of these tendencies from time to time. And I want to point out that if I asked, if someone said, I'm naturally pessimistic, and I said, would you describe yourself in this way? I bet they would probably look back and they would, they'd probably look back and they'd probably say, well, if I'm being really honest, I'm probably closer to the realistic side. I don't always think this way. But for someone who always thinks this way, or the majority of the time more than not, how would those thoughts or behaviors or patterns make that person feel? How did they make you feel when I read them? Could be red, could be blue, could be green. But again, I'm calling out how our brains attach to words and words attach to emotions, and those emotions drive our cortisol levels, whether we know what's happening or not. So I just took two words, realistic and pessimistic, and I said, where would you fall on that spectrum? Because one of them is more green and the other one's going to lead to more blue and red, just by how we think. But now let's look at two other terms, because I get these a lot. Let's talk about optimistic and what that sounds like. So if you describe yourself as optimistic, you have a positive outlook, meaning you have a stronger tendency to see how things could be good or things could be better. But your outlook also accepts the fact that it may not go that well. It could happen in a different way, and I wouldn't love that, but I think we could work through it. So it's a positive outlook, but it's not toxic positivity, which we'll talk about in a minute. A hopeful attitude. So it's still like, gosh, this isn't great, or this hurts, or this is hard, and I see that there's hope. I see that it's going to get better. I see that it's not going to stay this way. So picking up that tone of, I'm acknowledging how hard this is right now. I'm validating that this does not feel good, and I still see that we can move forward. Optimists are open to challenges, right? They don't see challenges as barriers. They're hard. They're something that we have to stop and work through or work around, but they're there for a reason. And so what can we learn from this? In that, they're staying emotionally productive because they're saying, I don't like this. I don't feel good about this. I am disappointed. They're acknowledging all of those things on their way to saying, now how can we approach this from a standpoint of learning and growth? Again, solution focused and adaptable, which are similar to the realistic descriptions. So after you hear the optimistic descriptions, again, how is it making you feel? What types of chemicals or hormones are being triggered internally just by those descriptions? And that would be someone that's consistently demonstrating optimistic patterns. And then finally, let's compare that with avoidant behavior patterns. This is a common one, and I have a lot of these too. So I've got my hand in the air. Avoidants are mostly fear-based, meaning that something hard happens or there's a tough conversation or something's escalating and their immediate reaction is, I got to get out of here. I either have to leave the conversation, I've got to leave the situation, I'm not responding to that email, whatever it is, I'm fearing that something bad is going to happen. And so avoiding seems like the right thing to do. It's also a stress response. It's the flight or freeze response. It can be active withdrawal. It can be physically leaving or moving on rather than staying regulated, which can lead to resistance of, I don't want to try things that are hard, or I don't want to be uncomfortable. So I'd rather resist that, sense the feelings that are coming along with some of these descriptions. It can lead to, just like with pessimism, ongoing powerlessness. I feel like I have no control of the situation. I feel like I can't do anything. It's never going to change. I'm just going to keep avoiding anything that I can be involved in or make a difference. And here's where I'm going to jump to this last one. Toxic positivity is actually a form of avoidance. And here's the description of toxic positivity. It's an excessive focus on maintaining a positive outlook, regardless of acknowledging negative emotions that might also be valid. So it's this almost rejection of emotions, anything other than positive. And I think it's coming from a good place. It's trying to say, you know, I do have hope. I do see that we can move forward, but because it's coming out of that fear, it's saying, let's ignore or not acknowledge any other emotions that could be present. Now, optimists would actually be able to do that. Avoidants are going to try to avoid it. A toxic positivity person believes that everyone should always be positive, and that's not realistic because we're humans and we have emotions. So if that belief is there and then other people are not always happy or optimistic, then it could turn into anger or criticism or a tone that's not positive, and that's not what they intend, but that's how it would happen. It's an active invalidation of others' perspectives. So I've actually been in a situation, it was small, but it was one of those where I was like, I acknowledged that it was kind of cold and windy that day. And the person came back at me right away and they're like, yeah, but it's at least this many degrees. And I just was caught off guard because I thought, does she think I'm being negative because I'm just acknowledging that it's slightly cold and windy? It's relative, but it came back with, no, that's not true. This is the way I see it. So it's just small, but it can have an impact on our cortisol levels. So thinking through again, with what I described, how do those behaviors of avoidance or toxic positivities make you feel? Is it blue? Is it red? Is it green? So when it comes to emotional accountability, it's important, going back to the train conductor, that we're not just taking accountability for our outcomes. We got the thing off the track. We keep the train moving along. We also want to be taking accountability for what's going on inside of us on an ongoing basis, not just in the moment, but then if it's building up or the residuals that are happening beyond that moment. So with this chart, it's just a very basic chart. Oh, sorry guys. Technical errors today. Thank you for your patience and your grace. With this chart, it's just talking about what happens when you're not taking accountability for your emotions. that second row, but you are taking accountability for your decisions and your outcomes. This is what I would call hot energy or renegades. These are the people that ask for forgiveness, not permission. And I've done that before. I'm not saying that's not a good solution in certain aspects, but if that's your go-to strategy, is I'm just going to bulldoze and push through and make this happen, and we just got to keep working and we got to keep moving the train down the track, then you actually aren't taking into account your emotional accountability. And the fact that you could be having emotions other than red, right? Because those aren't green emotions. And other people might be having emotions based on your emotions. And so how can we concentrate on actually staying into the green more often? That's when we're fully accountable. At the same time, if you're not taking accountability for your emotions, and then you might make a decision, but then you don't take accountability for the outcome, you're just like, it is what it is, I can't control it anyway, it doesn't even matter. That's kind of that overwhelmed or sad energy. And it starts with acknowledging that at the beginning, my emotions weren't regulated. And therefore, it led to me not wanting to even take accountability for the outcomes. And now I might not be even producing as the train moves down the track.
Hey, Barb, we can't see your slides anymore.
Okay. You see them now?
There we go. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going to take 5 seconds and let you review this chart that I just described, but now you can actually see it. So considering, again, each of us might from time to time fall into the red or the blue. How do we consistently work our way back into the green, which are the positive chemicals and the positive hormones that keep us regulated? One tool that I have created and I use a lot with a lot of my clients is called the strength and stress dial. You'll notice there's blue colors and red colors and green colors. So let me explain this dial to you and then apply it to a couple of scenarios. So I talk about when we are at our best, even if stuff's really hard going on around us, but we feel grounded and regulated, and some of those words, we feel curious, we feel self-controlled, like that middle section. Picture this like the thermostat on your car, right? It's at its best when it's kind of up in the middle-ish. But if it runs too far to the right or too far to the left, your car is not going to operate at optimal capacity or optimal capacity. So the thing is that a lot of these dials start with our greatest strength. And because that's what we naturally use for most of the solutions that we use when we're going down the train track. They come naturally to us, and each of us has different strengths. So I work with people to identify what are those strengths that just naturally get you going in the morning and keep you going throughout the day. Let's see when you're at your best with those strengths, and let's see where you start to get stressed with those strengths. So an example for me would be one of my greatest strengths is called catalyst. What that means is I love situations that are new and different. Maybe they've been done before, but maybe we want to explore a different aspect of it. Maybe it hasn't been done before. And if it's something that I really enjoy, I want to be on the front end of change. I want to be at the front end of trying new things. So that's great if I'm in an environment that needs that tool, that wants that skill. It comes in really handy with coaching because every client's a new client, and I'm like, oh, where are we at today and where would you like to go? So Catalyst gets used appropriately when I'm coaching or teaching. And then let's say I'm in an environment where we just need to follow the rules and the procedures, don't go beyond the box, and that's necessary and needed so that we can have quality and you name it, consistent expectations. I'm going to start to get stressed in that environment, not because it's the wrong environment, not because they're doing things wrong, but because I have Catalyst as my top strength. So I'm going to watch myself go down that right-hand side, and I'm going to start getting agitated over time if Catalyst isn't able to be unleashed somehow. Then I might even start getting demeaning, meaning like being sarcastic or using a certain tone around the people that are operating well in an operational environment, whereas I want to bring some newness and excitement, and that may not be the right solution. Then I might even go to the next one, which is resentful right fighter, and start saying that no, it has to be done this way because this is how I see it, and you all just don't want to change, and I'm starting to pick on people, or again, the demeaning stuff. Now I have my hand in the air. I know myself enough to know that I absolutely go hot to the right when I get stressed. And I check in with myself and go, is catalyst really needed and necessary right now in this moment? Is catalyst the thing that's needed and necessary right now in this moment? And if it's not, well, I'm going back to the middle. I'm taking ownership of my discomfort. Back to the middle, ownership. I'm self-aware, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm taking ownership. That's emotional accountability. And I just went to curiosity. Is my tool the one that's needed right now? And if not, I'm just going to dial it down here, and I'm going to see who else might want it or need it. Or can I find an environment where it would be more useful or helpful to other people and have a bigger impact? So that's an example of one that is going too hot to the right. I've had others who have the strength of empathizer. Big hearts, big feelers, people, that's their gift. And they feel great when they're able to help people and nurture people and lift people up and encourage people, and that is great. And then there's environments where it's just go, 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 work, 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 task, 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 deadline, deadline, deadline. Empathizers feel disconnected. Empathizers don't feel that they're getting the time or the space or the validation they need to truly build into people. And they start going a little bit to the left. No, not all of them, some can go to the right. But I do see a little more of the blue behaviors from empathizers. No judgment. It's just, this is a natural part of, I have this energy around this great strength that I have, and I'm not finding a way to explore or use it, quite frankly. So it will get tamped down and it will turn into those blue behaviors. And then again, the longer that goes on, the further to the left it goes. So this is how I use this dial. I do have a copy of it just in this form. I believe out on the website, but if not, we'll make sure to get it to you guys afterward. And it's another way to talk or think about our emotions and how we hold ourselves accountable, either in the moment, ongoing, or over time. But at least we can check in and say, where are we now? I guess I had 2 additional slides for those examples. I just described catalyst and I just described empathizer. So as you think about today, where are you feeling either red, hot, or kind of blue, overwhelmed? And I would just invite you to start with curiosity. That's the first step, is just to say, well, if I'm truly this, or I believe that this is the value that I add, is that what's needed right now in this situation? Because I'm a hammer, right? I'm that tool in the toolkit, but is that a nail? Maybe a screwdriver is the better option. Maybe a miter saw is the better option. But until I at least ask myself that question, I will always just come in and try to make that thing work. And that might be what's causing me to go red or blue. And then really just check in with how you feel. Maybe you are a catalyst and you can go for long periods of time and just go, 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 but suddenly you do feel overwhelmed and you've suddenly flipped over to blue. It meant that you were running down the train track too far, too long. Everybody needs to go recharge. Even trains have pit stops. So where would it be best for you to get some balance and just either rest or go play? So as we wrap up here today, just 2 comments. Your greatest strengths, my greatest strengths, our greatest strengths, when overused or underused, will become our greatest limitations. It will cause us stress unless we're very aware. And I call it our blind spot, because we took that thing we were already good at and we either dialed it up and now we're repressing it. It's not up enough. So it's our blind spot. Then we will stress ourselves and others out if we react from the energy of our blue or red cortisol. So the goal then is to at least acknowledge I'm in red or blue. That's on me. How can I go quickly resolve that? And the reality is, because the train's always going to keep moving down the track. The train will always keep moving down the track. There will always be stuff thrown in our way. And we don't have to live in red or blue if we know that green is possible. So as you continue to work with EFR, if you were to work with life coaches, again, we can give you specific tools based on you, your strengths, your patterns, and how we can get you back into green more often. For today's session, we just want to point out Employee and Family Resources. This is being brought to you by, and then also my personal information here from my company, CI Coaching and Development.
Well,
I'm
thank
going
you,
to pause here.
Yeah, that was great. I'm going to just go over the next couple of slides, which are reminders of the EAP benefits. If you are listening and have EFR's EAP, remember life happens and we are here to help. You can reach us 24/7. Master's level counselors will answer the phones at 800-327-4692. And your EAP benefits are for you and anyone in your household. So you and your immediate family members have access to a variety of resources, which are showcased on the next slide. And one of them is life coaching, as Barb mentioned. She is one of our life coaches, but we are really here for a variety of reasons. So you can call our 800 number to talk, explore your benefits. You can set up in-person or telehealth counseling. You can have access to life coaching, financial consultation, legal consultation, elder and childcare resources, and identity theft resolution. Another great resource we have is a platform called Togetherall, which is a place where you can anonymously give and get support. And if you go to efr.org on our website at the top under Programs and Services EAP, you can find out more information about all of the benefits that you see on that slide right there. I enjoyed this. I'm definitely an empathizer, and I go blue when so
between our red and our blue, we'll figure the green.
That was interesting. I'm getting a lot of thank yous, but are there any questions or things that individuals would like to share with Barb before we close out the webinar for the day? Yeah, we can list the EAP number again. Barb, could you go back one slide, please?
Yep, you bet.
800-327-4692. And it's answered.
Again, thank you all for your time and engagement today. Really appreciate it.
We have a couple more webinars to round out this calendar year. On October 25th, which is 2 weeks from today, we have psychological safety in the workplace with Lars Peterson, and he's going to be talking about what psychological safety is and what it is not, and we're going to be talking about a new benefit offering while working workplaces that EFR is rolling out this fall. And then on November 15th, we have the gifts of gratitude, Unlocking the Joy of Abundance with Ronnie Anderson. And if you go to efr.org under the Stay Connected menu, click on webinars. There you will find a library of our webinars that we have done in the past. And you can access links to register for upcoming webinars. And one person just said, is it possible to get this presentation info in an email? I had internet issues. So if you go to efr.org under Stay Connected, click on webinars, then you will see by the end of this day, I will have that on the website. So you will have access to the recording. And also there's a handout that's attached. So before I close out, there is a handout that's attached. So if you want to download that, go ahead and do so now. But thank you, Barb, for your time and talents towards putting this together. And it was nice to see a good crowd today. So I will go ahead and close out the webinar and make sure everyone remembers that EFR is an available resource for you and anyone in your household. And don't forget to bring this information home. A lot of times family members don't know that they have access to our benefits, and they do. So please share information with your family members and make it a great day. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.